Welcome. This podcast is an exploration into being human and what's possible when there's less attention on the noise in our heads. Warning. While listening to this broadcast, you may experience moments of deep peace, sighs of relief, personal insights, or long stretches of dead air. Do not be afraid. This is normal. Under the Noise with Wyn and Kate Roberts.
Welcome to Under the Noise. I'm Kate Roberts, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Wyn Morgan. Hi, Wyn.
Hi, Kate, my amazing co-host.
How's it going?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well.
So we've met now.
In person, live.
In real life.
As you say, in 3D.
In 3D. And this is the first time we've talked since we've actually seen each other, or we both left Prague. It's the first time we've talked since.
Well, Wyn, do you want to tell everybody where we met and why we were there?
Yeah. Well, we met in Prague at a conference. I think I just said that.
But what conference?
It was called the Listening World Conference and Listening with the Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the brainchild of a dear friend of mine and yours now, Katerina Fisarova. And it was effectively showing what true listening can do in every aspect of life, at every, on every scale and every level of our existence on this planet. And it was gorgeous.
Well,
So it was for 3 days. The first 2 days were a mixture of keynotes and panels and discussions in the main stage, and then on the third day, there were a series of breakout workshops that people could choose which ones to go to. There might have been 6 to 7 running at the same time over 5 slots, I think, during the day on the third and final day. But here's what I want to let you, dear listener, know. Because Kate and I had never met before, what I didn't realize is that Kate's hugs are like a chiropractic treatment. So it was a kind of like, I don't know, first time we said hi in the hotel lobby, right? You were in the hotel a few miles away. And I was staying at the hotel right next to the conference center. And you came over so we could just hang out, for a couple of hours. And it was a nice hug to begin with. But the hug at the end of our little kind of like chat with a few other people around as well, I don't know if it was the Prosecco that you had or the bourbon I had, but I felt 3 or 4 of my vertebrae kind of like click back into place because you like squeezed us like. So, yeah, that's how I know you exist, because my spine is straighter.
there you go. Who knew?
Who knew?
Oh.
I knew you were a massage therapist in a previous life. I didn't know you could do that with a hug.
You can. It's lovely.
Yeah, it really is. So after knowing each other for what is it? It's not far off 4 years, right? Since we first got
It's pretty close. Almost. Yeah.
It'll be 3 years in October, I think.
Mm.
It's just wild that now we've met in real life.
No, I think in October it'll be 4 years.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. 4 years in October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we've only met
heard me at the end of September. When I did that thing was the end of September of 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to tell people what we're going to talk about today?
Well, you had the idea of, because we were catching up since we haven't seen each other since the conference, your idea was to talk about some of the things that we came away from, or that we enjoyed the most, or that we had some insights around, or things that really touched us about what we heard and saw there. And I thought that was a great subject. And you've been holding on to one and not saying anything so that you can say it on the show. So I'm going to actually open it up to you. I'd love to hear what you saw.
So overall, it was just beautiful. 3 days of sitting there and absorbing and listening. And in the time in between all the talks as well, we were in the kind of like the breakout rooms and stuff like that, where we were having our lunches and breaks and the coffee area set aside. And seeing some people for the very first time, you, Mavis Khan, a whole heap of other people I'd never met in person before, and a lot of other people I had not seen in 4 years, maybe a little longer for some. I mean, pre-COVID was the last time I saw probably half of the people there. Some even long, some maybe a little longer than that. However, my personal highlight as an insight to me happened on the day before it started. So we'd had our little, drink and catch up and stuff like that in person, and just like, giggling like a couple of 5 and 6 year olds in the lobby bar area, and a few other people were doing the same with us. And then we had a kind of like a pre-conference drinks reception on the mezzanine level. And in that was just really nice to break the ice with loads of people, so all the hellos could be done before the conference started properly the next day on the Friday. And me and my friend Marie went outside and we saw the sunset, and then we clapped as the sunset, and it was just like really cool. And then a bunch of other people came outside on the balcony and everything. And about 2 hours later, there's this amazing Thursday night with just lovely light in the sky that was still coming through, even though it was getting quite dark. You and I were just chatting, and I suppressed a yawn. Remember this? You do now, right? You remember this now, right? Now, I thought I was suppressing the yawn really well because I didn't think you standing next to me could see me or hear me. And you just turned around and went, "What the heck was that?" Well, it wasn't quite those words, because a few more Proseccos might have been inhaled by that stage. And you went, "Look, Mavis Khan is in there. And she's," and I don't want to say her age, but 30 years older than you, Wyn, right? And I did the math in my head. 30 years older than me. And you said, and she's kicking your ass. Because she's 30 years older than you. She's not yawning. Look at her in there. I looked at her in there and I went, yeah. But I thought, well, she's coming from Central Time Zone in the US. It's like 7 hours difference to this. Of course she's feeling fine. It's 2 p.m. in Minnesota. For me, it's been a long day. Thanks very much, And anyway, the next thought that came into my head as I'm looking back over the scene, giggling over the fact that I've been badly suppressing a yawn, and you teasing me about it. And then I had this thought, wait, I could be this happy for 30 years. Mm-hmm. That's what really got to me. I could be this happy for 30 years. Look at Mavis Khan. She is rude and 30 years older than me. And I went, I'd be this happy for 30 years. Because it's funny, before that, I thought the next 30 years was about me biologically starting to fall apart, right? Which parts of me will not work so well. Which parts of me will age. And then I had this other thought for the first time that night. In that moment, I went, wait, I could be this happy for 30 years. And that floored me in a beautiful way. And I had goosebumps right then, which is sometimes called chicken skin in some parts of the world, if you're wondering what that means. but it's when the hairs on my arms and my back are just all stood up because of how deep I felt that inside. That thought that was just so filled with gratitude in that moment, and that just opened me up for what was to come over the next 3 days, because it was beautiful.
Yeah. Was the gratitude for having a friend that's so willing to give you shit all the time?
Well, that too.
Just keeping it real. When
Well, who would have known if that insight would have occurred to me if you hadn't given me shit?
well, maybe.
Yeah, so maybe you should take the credit for it.
I think I already am, sort of.
Oh, good. All right, that's cool.
I think I might already be. Now, but in all seriousness, yeah, I was giving you a hard time. And I'm pretty sure my words sounded a lot like, you know what, if she's in there having a good time, you're not going upstairs to your room. It's technically what I said.
And I didn't, right?
You're
I
not
think
going
I was
to bed. Forget it.
They were asking us to leave the bar like 3 hours later. I think we were
That's
the last. There
right.
was about 4 other people in there, right? There was about 6 people left when we left.
I know, right?
So I'm glad you gave me that harder time, and I'm glad that you made me stay up like an adult, as opposed to a 7-year-old who needs to be put into bed
Like
with the story.
Mavis. There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I love how we create these stories about the future. And then something happens and we realize how much we've made up. I love that.
Yeah.
And I do that all the time too. Sometimes I wonder if the only contribution that my personal mind can really make, for the most part, is limitation. Like, I know it can do basic things and it's wonderful to get me around, and I don't have to learn everything brand new every day. And that's amazing. But when it comes to anything about my future, I think it can only be limiting. Even if it's amazing, it's still limiting possibility.
Well, it's still a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Made up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to know. Because it can't know. That intellect can't know. The personal mind can't know the future. It can have a good stab at what it thinks has happened in the past and what it thinks is happening now. But it has no idea about the future. It thinks it does. It's really compelling. There's no idea. No idea. Then again, Kate, your personal mind giving me the hard time, enabled me to see the story I'd made up, and then I'd have an amazingly better and different one without your personal mind.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for it if you're not.
That's true. And actually, that made me think of one of the first things that I really heard. So this week, I'm moving my daughter up to Virginia to go to school. She's graduated high school, and I'm moving her up to go to school in Virginia. And one of the very first speakers was someone that we've had on the podcast before. It was a really beautiful episode. But it was Marina Galan. And one of the things that she spoke of in her first, I think it was her first speech, was about trusting her children and the wisdom inside them, and being sure that they knew that she trusted that wisdom inside them, encouraging them to do the same. And that really spoke to me because so the first time I saw Marina was when you and I first got together. I went over to say hello to her and her 16-year-old son.
Yes.
And so I'm speaking with them, and she's talking about how her 16-year-old son is backpacking around Europe by himself. And I look over at him, right? And all I can see really and hear is a conversation I had with my daughter right before I left. And she's like, so you can't put silverware in the microwave? And of course, this is the first time I'm leaving the country with her by herself, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, is she going to burn the house down while I'm gone? Like, this is what I'm thinking. And she's almost 18, right? So I'm like, okay. No, you can't put silverware in the microwave. That was my first thing. And then the second one was like, you sure you're good if I go? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. And then I get over there, right? And I'm meeting this 16-year-old kid who's backpacking by himself around Europe. And I'm like, oh, man. And then, of course, she speaks to this trust in her speech. And it was just such a beautiful reminder to me as I'm, moving her away, and she's going to be on her own, and that I can trust the wisdom inside of her, and so can she. And that was just so powerful for me as a reminder of how well she's supported beyond, as a mom, what I could ever know or do. And now my only job really is as a mom, is to be there if she needs anything, and remind her that she does have that she can depend on. And I love that.
Yeah. I remember what I said to you when you shared that about. What do you mean? So you can't put silverware in the microwave? Do you remember what I said back to you?
You said,
You don't put anything in the microwave.
that's what you
What
said.
would you want a microwave for? It's like, if you want to kill anything in food, go ahead. That's just my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right, everybody, but, well, I won't touch them.
Yes, you are anti-microwave. I remember.
I am. But it's great to notice wisdom in everyone, regardless of age. What else from the conference was cool for you?
Oh my goodness. Oh man, I heard such amazing things, but I can tell you that I wrote down one quote out of all the amazing things that I heard. I actually wrote this one down because I didn't want to forget it. But it was Dickin, who was with Mark Howard online. So he wasn't there in person, but they were there online for a segment. And, you know, when this understanding first found me and I started to see things, all of my, and I definitely haven't seen all of my stories, but some of the most kind of powerful stories that I had created about who I was, it just came to the forefront of my awareness, how I'd made it all up. And they started to fall away as I started to see more and look more in this direction. And there was this initial feeling of wanting to just take all my beliefs and just wrap them around me because it felt like they were being stripped away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it felt vulnerable in the beginning because you see these stories that you've created about who you are, what makes you you, and then they start to fall away. And it was a little vulnerable in the beginning. Now with time and having more things fallen away and more things, it doesn't feel like that as much anymore. But Dickens said, here, I've got it in front of me, it said, it wasn't hard, it was easy because I wasn't giving up anything of value. And I was like, but I didn't feel that way in the beginning, but now I'm like, yes. Yes. All of those things that I saw initially, they didn't really have value or truth to them. And I just love that quote because even though it initially felt a little scary, a little unsteady, because I'd built my whole life around these things, these beliefs. But I love what he said. I wasn't giving up anything of value. And I knew that was true for me. I wasn't giving up anything of value either. And when those things fall away and you're sitting in truth, something's truer than you really ever realized. It was very peaceful.
Mm. Well, I just wrote that down.
Yeah, I did. He was also one of our guests. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
low.
You know, I just had a thought when you were sharing that I wasn't giving up anything of value about letting go of beliefs and identity and stories that we've got about ourselves. I think that would be a great episode to have.
Yeah,
So the next time we record, it could be on the slate for that.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that popped into my mind now is one of the most insightful moments or impactful moments for me was on the Sunday. And I was about to start doing one of the workshops with Aaron Turner on the Sunday morning.
Mm.
And he and I had met, I think, a couple of times on Zoom to talk about it briefly. And then we're going to have breakfast together, which for me is coffee. So I had coffee with Aaron and we were talking about the idea, and our workshop was about relationships going from adversarial to collaborative or cooperative to then synergistic. Because, you know, he and I would kind of, a lot of the business interested people would come to it, so that language would kind of fit into it. Even though Aaron really simplified it as like bad relationships, good relationships, and fantastic relationships. I'm just like, well, that's so much better. So that's what we talked about. But what was interesting to me was because we were looking at the nature of relationships and why wouldn't we want every relationship to be fantastic? And who pays the price if a relationship is bad? Who pays the price? And it's us, because we've got the feeling that carries around in us. It doesn't come from them. It comes from me to me. So it's only me that has the bad feeling. And bad feelings just aren't, they're not our typical feeling of choice. Then I would just like, in this kind of mulling this over, my mind would just see more and more about it. And what was amazing to me, and I remember two people came into the workshop who I've known for a while, but again, haven't seen them in many years. And they walked in, and I just felt so great to see them. And I went, this is working right now. This whole notion, to me, who is leading the workshop, I get the feeling of a fantastic relationship now. And they haven't changed. They're walking in, and I just have this love and warmth towards them. And I can't remember being how visibly glowing I was at two people coming into the room. Because it wasn't like, oh, I'm so glad they're here. Wow, this means something really cool about me, right? It was, oh, I'm really happy to see them. The purity of that was very special to notice. And then looking around the room, I don't know how many we had in there, 20 people maybe, I don't know. I probably didn't know 14 of them. That warmth was still there as we were sharing and enjoying and listening to them. And I think the reason that to me is a profound thing is that the more I see, or the more I look in a direction, the more I'm going to inevitably see. If I know I want something, such as, well, it doesn't make sense for me to have bad feeling towards other people. I want to get over that. I want to not be in that. And as soon as I know that, then my mind will show me more and more about that. And less of an appetite for judgmental thinking that I have for people. I just have a less appetite for it. And it's been noticeable even in the, whatever it's been, 10 days, 12 days since then. It's been very noticeable to me. But that is still playing out. It hasn't faded. It's still there. It's really lovely to notice.
That trip was a nudge that I'd followed. I don't think I'd really committed to going until like maybe a week before the trip, right? Maybe a week and a half. And and the last time I went to like it wasn't a conference, but it was definitely a coaching thing. I'd gone out to LA and I was following a nudge and wasn't sure about it, why I was doing it, right? I just knew to do it. But my head was so full of why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Right? And so it was so busy with not knowing. And this trip was almost the exact opposite. I've never been so empty, open, unknowing. But also, and I heard a good friend say this word, and I could feel it. I could feel the word, which I love, by the way. I love when words speak to us in the way that you're listening just a little bit harder and closer to it because it's touching a part of you. But it's the word available. I was just empty and available. I didn't need to know anything. Like no matter how long it was or anything that maybe wasn't my preference, like none of it mattered. And in that space, it's like magical and brilliant because all these things came in and filled the space. Connection, conversation, listening, so much like listening, but from a very empty place where it just is allowed to kind of come through and like wash all over you the things that you're hearing. Not needing to hear anything, but hearing things or to know what it means to me, because if I need to know that, I will. There's just a very different space than even like a year ago. And that's when magic happens. And it doesn't always look like your preference, but it's magical. But the insight that I had about that, because it made for this beautiful trip, and it was everything was so wonderful, right? Was I got home and I was trying to share that with somebody. And this is a little different. It was like I could see how we create our experience. Because what I was doing was I was sharing that experience and I was taking that feeling and I was saying, that's what it was over there. I can attribute it to the traveling, to the conference, to the people, the things that happened. But I just did that. I put emptiness over there as that thing in Prague. And I walked back into my normal everyday life and jumped back into busy. The same busy. Yeah. The same busy before I left. And I put emptiness and magic in Prague. And I was telling someone this, and I was like, oh my God, I put emptiness in Prague and magic and not knowing and having that be perfect to not know. It's all there in Prague. I left it there. And I came back, and it was like jumping back into the busy was an outfit I didn't fit into anymore. It just felt like, oh, that's how busy I was. And it didn't fit. It was tight and uncomfortable. And I felt so much gratitude for the discomfort of it. And I don't know if I would have recognized how busy and uncomfortable I was. And how I just took that beautiful emptiness and put it over in Europe as that place where it was, even though it's here. And that is so cool when we see how we're creating our experience. And then I could have a relationship with emptiness and magic at any moment. Like, what? Why would I put it in Europe? But I did.
Yeah.
And it was real. Like, oh, it's that thing over here.
Yeah.
But how cool is it to see how we do that?
So, a question, if you're okay.
Yeah.
Since you noticed that it no longer fits and it feels tight,
Yeah.
what's happened since you've noticed that?
I know that there's a perfect, lovely answer for that, but the truth is that it's just made that feeling more obvious. I'm not trying to fix anything. Like the fact that it feels uncomfortable, like I'm done. Like I'm
Cool.
freaking changed. I don't have to do anything for that. It's done. It will just feel and seem like not a good idea anymore. Like that's why I love this, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've changed. But it looks just the same. It feels just the same as when I left. Does that make sense? Like I walk right back into it and that has not changed. And yet I know I'm different. That I am changing. And somebody else said this. It was Derek Mason, another speaker, who has not been on our show, by the way. We should totally have him on the show. Like, why has he not been on the show? He said, there's always a slower gear. And I was like, yeah. And what's interesting about that gear is that I'm not sure how much it has to do with what I'm doing on the outside. Like, I'm not sure if they're actually related. And that goes against everything that's out there and, outside of anything like 3P and, even mindfulness, there's always something to do in that, right? There's a doing, but it's very unique and very different from anything out there that I hear. But somehow it's a faster gear that a lot of people are looking for. And he said slower gear, and I was like, that's it. Yeah.
But you know what's fascinating to me as well in that? We can go faster and further in a slow gear.
Right.
That's the ironic part of it, right? It's true. Slower on the inside, more stuff on the outside. Or another way of saying it, taking that car metaphor about a slower gear. So a car in second gear would be working really hard to go 50 miles an hour or 50 kilometers an hour. A car in fifth gear, the engine's working kind of slower. There's less revs going on when it's doing the same speed. There's less of a toil or a toll being taken on the engine. I think that's the bit that's kind of like similar to us. When we're slower on the inside, we can go faster and further on the outside, which is an amazing thing to notice and enjoy it. Which, let's face it, what would be the point of going anywhere fast or further if it wasn't enjoyable? I mean, you defeat the objective, right? What the heck would be the point? So we get more fun and achieve more at the same time at less of a personal cost. Absolutely true.
And it seems like it's, I guess because you're more more aware or more present, it makes the experience so much richer.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to go back to something that you said, because I think this is worthwhile pointing out a couple of things as to why, in my opinion, that was so cool. Because first of all, you noticed that space, the available space, was not Prague related. Because often what we have is false attribution. We think it's due to circumstance, geographical location, a person, anything that's outside of us. It looks like that is the cause of the internal availability in space and feeling. You had to see that in order for that then to be noticeable, that this tightness is not something that is something that you want to live with back in Florida. Because if you'd have thought, well, this is tight, oh, but that's just Florida.
Right.
Flat, easy fitting clothes only happen in Europe, not in Florida. You had to see that for that then to be, wait a minute, this tight fitting mentality isn't coming from anywhere outside. That's an internal thing. And then you just didn't have to do anything about it, but you just had a distaste for it, which means that, to me anyway, whenever I've noticed that, I'm on a learning curve without me needing to do anything about it. That because I don't like how it feels, I'll do less of it. I've got less of a tolerance for it. Meanwhile, I'm good as gold. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to notice and to see the absolute truth of that time and time again. For everyone, not just for me. For you in the way that you've shared today. And hopefully you, dear listener, that maybe that's true for you too. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. How it might look to you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks. This was as always, we have a starting point and we never know where we're going to go. Another lovely conversation that I'm glad you've listened to this week's episode of Under the Noise with my amazing co-host, Kate Roberts, and me, Wyn Morgan. And if you want to get in touch with us, if you've got ideas of what you'd love us to share or talk about in future episodes, then please do get in touch. Our details are in the outro and wherever you found this podcast. And we look forward to speaking with you again very soon. Take care and have a great week.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have a topic or question that you'd like us to chat about, email Wyn or Kate at wyn@winning.co.uk and Kate at katerobertscoaching.com. Until then, enjoy what's possible under the noise.